Maar ek dink dis baie oulik van tyd om so iets in te stel.
And Tino van Westenhagen dominate the special vehicle category. Winston Yamaha star Richard Manning makes South African motorsport history for the second time. And mixed fortunes for quad racer VICUS van Deventer on the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. There was dust, there was mud, there was action in the Land Rover Baberspan 1000 recently. Sit back and enjoy the action presented by Land Rover Genuine Parts. South Africa's off-road racing fraternity converged on the Western Transvaal in the middle of March for the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. The race made history this year as the first round of the newly instituted South African Cross-Country Rally Championship. The Cross-Country Rally Championship brings this country into line with international trends and is designed to win South Africa a place on the World Championship calendar. Political upheaval in Bophuthatswana forced the organisers, the Baberspan Off-Road Motor Club, into a late change of route. The late change added to the tension where competitors were concerned.
I believe there's a new road today, so that will be quite obvious, but it's not easy to find a road some of the time. But the first benefit of it is we haven't got dust. And the main thing is we must just stay in front.
Defending champions and local favourites RP Raceco and Lucas Dreyer had their tactics all worked out.
Wat my betref gaan ek probeer om agter hom te bly. Ek sal nie probeer om verby te gaan nie want omdat dit 'n nuwe roete is en mens weet nie wat lê voor vir jou nie en die gras is geweldig lank. Ek dink mens kan maklik hier jou voertuig beskadig deur in die lang gras te vinnig te ry. So ek sal my eerder die agterhoede dek en dan môre kan ek die krane oopdraai.
With a sprint series win already under their belts this season, the father and son team of FRANZ CZEPEK Senior and Junior were also among the pre-race favourites.
We're reasonably well prepared. It's going to be a long race, a very dusty race. It's going to be no mud. We've had a lot of mud in the last couple of races. So we'll see what happens. We'll start off slowly as we always do and see if we can work our way through the field.
The late route change saw the event run entirely on South African territory. The two racing sections of around 480 kilometres each were centred around the De La Reyville area, with the car competitors feeling each other out in the early stages of racing section 1. With the majority of the route passing through vast expanses of Western Transvaal mealie and sunflower fields, the rally was expected to be fast with an intriguing duel in the offing between the high-tech space frame cars and the bigger and bulkier bakkies. In sweltering conditions and with 2 days of tough racing ahead, no one could blame crews for a conservative approach on day one. The Baberspan always provides for a high attrition rate, and this was a factor of which crews were also acutely aware. Back at the start, the big contingent of bikers was preparing to get underway 2.5 hours after the cars. The Lesotho star Patrick Andrews drew the number 1 starting berth, but would have preferred to see someone else lead away the pack.
I actually don't like starting first at all. I like somebody to set the pace for me in front. I'm just going to wait for Alfie and them to come past, and then I'll see if I can stick to that pace.
After a win in the Honeylube Sun City 400, Springbok and defending champion Alfie Cox was the outright favourite to win the motorcycle category.
Baberspan is a hell of a lot faster race than what Sun City is. So, you know, we've got people like Yuri Human on a 500, Patrick Andrews, and he's also one that can do very well. Willie Ireland, he's itching for a win. I know, I've just heard along the camps. And I always seem like the man to beat, and it's a little bit pressure on me, but I'm just going to go and ride the best race I can.
Also among the favourites in the motorcycle section was the enigmatic Willie Ireland. Most experts expected a real scrap to develop between Cox and Ireland. Pre-race favourite among the small capacity 200 class machines was Winston Yamaha star Richard Manning. With the cars already well into the race, local heroes RP Raceco and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser were first on the road. Making full use of plenty of local knowledge, Raceco and Dreyer had moved ahead of fellow Springboks KASSIE COETZEE and Richard Leek in the factory Toyota Hilux. COETZEE and Leek were already running into overheating problems, and Klaus Degener and Tilo van Westenhagen were starting to catch the pair in the BP Raceco. As aggressive as ever, Degener was pushing hard. Now driving a Raceco after years in a Chernowith, Degener and von Westenhagen had the CZEPEK father and son combination hot on their heels in the V Motors Porsche Raceco. Fifth on the road and the first in the single-seater space frame cars was Richard Carolyn. Affectionately known as Obut among the off-road fraternity, Carolyn was also running into early problems with a slipping clutch. The Fincham brothers, Cecil and Michael, were having a good run in the privately entered Toyota Land Cruiser and were rapidly catching Carolyn, who was heading for early retirement. Behind the Finchams, another set of brothers, Herman and Karl-Heinz Solwald, were pushing hard in another Raceco. Also up with the early leaders were Craig Draper and Robin Houghton in the Draper Excavator Hire Raceco Porsche. Engine failure was just around the corner for the pair after an encouraging start to the event. Another father and son combination, Alfie and Tommy van Vuren, were also making steady progress in their Toyota Hilux. Van Vuren Sr. is a wily old hand at off-road racing, but the Toyota was slowly being overhauled by the consistent Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen in the Lowlet Sandmaster. With the cars setting off at 1-minute intervals, crews were starting to up the pace. Results at the end of racing section 1 would be calculated on corrected time, and teams were looking at picking up places. Behind Niels Eriksson and Johnny Walker, a flying Theo and Eugene KOETZEE were looking for a way past Cliff Barker and Mike Reddin in the Land Rover. Barker and Redding were sticking to a pre-race game plan and did the gentlemanly thing by allowing the KOETZEEs through. With the motorcycles now also in their stride, it came as no surprise to see Alfie Cox first on the road in the Pro Action KTM. Not far behind the Natal Springbok came Willie Ireland on the SKF Dalmas Diesel Suzuki. Cox and Ireland had moved ahead of Patrick Andrews on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki, with Andrews content to let the forerunners set the pace. Fourth on the road was the first of the Winston Yamaha riders, Daryl Curtis. Not far behind Curtis was the 500 class leader Yuri Human on the big Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki. Human was being chased by Chris Dodd on the second Winston Yamaha, with Tom Klaassen going well and holding down second place in the 500 class on the privately entered Kawasaki. The pace in the 200 class was being set by Alex Vowles on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki, with Richard Manning and Graham McLaughlin doing the chasing. Back at the service and refuel centre at Baberspan, tension was starting to build among the service crews. As is the case with Formula One racing, visits to the pits can often decide the outcome of an off-road race. Klaus Degener and Tila van Westenhagen were first into the service area in the BP Raceco.
Everything all right?
Service crews were busy working on the BP Raceco when the CZEPEKs appeared on the scene. In what was obviously a pre-planned piece of strategy, the CZEPEKs gave the service area a miss and took over the number 1 place on the road, while Degener and von Westenhagen were still in the service area. Next in were Arpi Raceco and Lucas Dreyer in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. A broken windscreen, the product of a coming together with a guinea fowl, was delicately removed. While Raceco's service crew moved into action, Degener and von Westenhagen took off after the CZEPEKs, who had snatched a 4-minute lead by doing away with calling into the refuel area.
Okay, good. Richard?
Ons het versukkels met daai windscreens kan ek sien nie.
The KASSIE KOETZEE Richard Leek Toyota Hilux and the Solwald brothers, Herman and Karl-Heinz, arrived at the service centre together. The Solwalds had sighed their way through the field, but the KOETZEE Leek combination was in trouble with an overheating problem. Raceco and Dreyer left the service area with the Solwalds hot on their heels. The ploy of missing out the service area had given Franz CZEPEK Sr. and Franz CZEPEK Jr. a valuable cushion over the rest of the pack. The pair were going along like a house on fire with sections of the route ultra fast. Unlike in many previous Baberspan events, wet sections were few and far between. The CZEPEKs were still first on the road, but disaster was just around the corner, with the pair forced to retire with mechanical problems. Klaus Degener was chasing his first national championship victory in 3 years. On a number of occasions in recent seasons, the ever-impetuous Degener has let his aggressive instincts get the better of him. On more than one occasion, Degener has let victory slip through his fingers, but this time out was adopting a more circumspect attitude. Now driving with an unconventional air conditioning system in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser, RP Raceco and Lucas Dreyer had some time to make up. The shattered windscreen on the run into the service area slowed down the pair, and they were keen to win back precious seconds. Behind the Springbok pair, the Saulwills were still on a charge. After starting 18th, the brothers were now 4th on the road. While the Saulwills continued to make up time, matters had not gone so smoothly for other crews. With the CZEPEKs and KASSIE COETZEE and Richard Leek headed for retirement, crews already enjoying a beer and a braai included Richard Schilling and Jeff Bell, Richard Carolyn, Stan Illman and Franz Stangl, and Craig Draper and Robin Houghton. Others, like the Fincham brothers in the Toyota Land Cruiser, continued to plough on regardless. Also still running strongly were Cliff Barker and Mike Reddin in the Land Rover. For the Bucky Brigade, the wet sections were no problem, and like Barker and Reddin, the bigger trucks sailed through the mud like battle cruisers under full steam. Also still steadily working their way through the pack were Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen in the Lowlet Sandmaster. There are times in off-road racing when a windscreen would be nice. The COETZEE brothers, Theo and Eugene, had the luxury of a closed cab, but could have done with four-wheel drive in the muddy sections. On the plus side for the spectators, the Chevy provided for some spectacular action. While the cars were ploughing through the muddy sections, it was dry and dusty where the leaders in the motorcycle section were concerned. Alfie Cox was still first on the road on the Pro Action KTM, with Willie Island second on the SKF Delmas Diesel Suzuki. The unfortunate Island was cruising slowly along, and a sore shoulder, the product of an encounter with a fence, was soon to see him join the list of retirements. Using to good effect the greater power of the big Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki 500, Yuri Human was on his way to a fast time. Human had a comfortable lead in the 500 class and had moved ahead of teammate Patrick Andrews, who was fourth on the road and third in the 250 class. The 200 class had a new leader in Richard Manning on the Winston Yamaha. Manning had caught up with teammate Daryl Curtis on the 250 class machine. In the quad racer category, pre-race favourite VICUS van Deventer was the man out in front on the Yamaha Banshee. Van Deventer made history when he crossed the line first overall in last year's Baberspan, but with the quads racing on an invitation basis, his win was never officially recognised. This year, the quads were granted national championship status for the first time, with Van Deventer again looking to be in a class of his own. First car home at the end of racing section 1 was the Saulwill Transport Raceco in the hands of Herman and Karl-Heinz Saulwill. On corrected time, the Saulwills led the special vehicle category ahead of Klaus Degener and Tille van Westenhagen, with Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen third. RP Raceco and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser led the production vehicle category ahead of Cliff Barker and Mike Reddin and the Van Vuren father and son team. The first motorcycle home was Alfie Cox, who also led the 250 class. Yuri Human was second and leading the 500 class, with Richard Manning, the top 200 finisher, in fourth place overall. In the quad racer class, VICUS van Deventer came home with a comfortable lead over Billy COETZEE, with Army Roberts third, Christo van der Merwe fourth, and Daryl O'Keefe fifth. For crews and riders with a tough 500 kilometres behind them, the day is not yet finished. A cold shower and beer beckon, but battered machinery sometimes has to be restored to health for the assault on racing Section 2. For some, the problems are weightier than others. Stay with us for more action from the Land Rover Baberspan 1000.